Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We recently had the opportunity to cross the border from our current home country of Germany into the beautiful countryside of Belgium. If you've traveled here or thought of traveling here, you've probably become acquainted with the city of Bruges. Bruges is known for being one of the most beautiful cities in Belgium. However, we did also want to give due consideration to the nation's capital, Brussels. Brussels is a beautiful and relatively modern city of just over 1 million people. This city serves as a cultural hub and is a bastion of French speakers in the mainly Dutch-speaking Flanders area of the country. There's tons to see and do here, and we were going to try to do our best to see as much as possible in just 48 hours. We arrived midday and immediately made our way to the subway, out to a place that doesn't get many visitors. The reason for this is just proximity to the city center, but we were glad we went here. This is the Park, or Jubilee Park. Its French name literally means the Park of the 50th Anniversary, and it was built and opened in 1880 under Leopold II to commemorate 50 years of Belgian independence. This park was actually almost not built, with Leopold II and the Belgian government going back and forth for years over the cost. And seeing it now, it's no wonder that it would take a fortune to construct. But on August 16, 1880, there was a huge celebration here for 50 years of Belgian independence. Many of the parts of this building in the middle of the park were rebuilt over the years, including the beautiful archway in the middle, which was reconstructed in 1905. There are a lot of things to see and do here. Are you a car person, Catherine?
A car person?
Yeah.
No.
Neither am I really, but if you are a car person, there is this amazing little place in Brussels that we think you'll like. It's Auto World. So if you like museums, this is the part of Brussels that you should be in. This is a park. I am not going to butcher the name, but this is a really nice, well-manicured park, and there's this huge monument in the middle. On one side is an art museum and history museum, and on the other side is like a military history museum. Then you have Auto World on the other side, and then there's even some more museums that are nearby as well. So it's really easy to get here. It's just a metro ride away from the city center, but there's a lot here to see. Man, it's kind of crazy just how big these buildings are.
I know, and it's really just a pleasant area to be in with the park here and then all the museums.
From Jubilee Park, it was only a 10-minute walk closer to the city to get to another beautiful park in the area. Alright, so we're in Leopold Park right now, which is a little bit north or west, not sure which direction we are, of the park that we were just in, and there's more museums here. There's the Museum of European History, and then also the Natural Sciences Museum, and they have a ton of dinosaur bones in there. It's pretty cool. The House of European History has several exhibits showing the transformation that Europe went through over the past couple of centuries. Instead of focusing on each individual nation within the area, the museum focuses on the shared history of all European countries. If you have some time, it might be worth a visit, especially since this museum is free and open 7 days a week. Given the sense of shared history that the House of European History tries to portray, it only makes sense that right next door you can find the European Parliament. This building is absolutely huge and quite imposing on the skyline. Here again, you get a sense of togetherness. We did see something rather interesting. It's big, huh?
Yeah, it's huge. Really modern. Kind of cool.
Do you think that these ostriches with their heads in the sand mean anything?
I'm sure they do.
We'll have to look up what that's all about. It's interesting that it would be right next to the European Parliament.
Yeah. Is that on purpose?
I'm thinking so. The team that installed these birds in 2016 said that there was no political drive to do so, and they were actually quite surprised when people started assigning some higher meaning to their installation. They claimed that the sculptures were merely a throwback to when this very spot used to be an ostrich pen in the old zoo of the 19th century. However, many cannot help but think that maybe there's a message here with these 7 birds with their heads in the ground, and only 1 bird looking forward, especially since it's standing outside one of the most important and controversial decision-making bodies in Europe. You can take tours of the building and even see a portion of the old Berlin Wall, which was donated by the city of Berlin as a gesture of goodwill to the European Parliament. When you come from Germany to look at the Berlin Wall in Brussels, it's cool that they have these here. Alright, so now we've seen 2 of the 3 seats of the European Parliament in Europe. Brussels, which is this big one here, and then there's a small one in Luxembourg, which we've seen, though there's really nothing to write home about there. I think it's mainly administration buildings. And then Strasbourg is the other location where a big piece of the European Parliament is, so maybe we have to go there next. With our daily dose of political intrigue in the books, we made our way through the city to an interesting lookout point. So we just stopped at this colonnade here. It's like Constitution Colonnade. Some history buffs are going to correct me, right? But it's basically a column that was built in 1830 to commemorate pretty much the first constitution in Belgium. So that's kind of cool. But then we also found this like lookout area. Apparently we're up like on a hill because you can see like all around and pretty much see all of Brussels from here. It's pretty cool. We continued walking, and right near here was Belgium's national church, the Cathedral of St. Michael and St. Gudula. This church has a very long history, with the groundbreaking taking place in the 9th century, and the towers and facade we see today being built later in 1485. It took nearly 600 years to finish, but this church is now a breathtaking example of Brabantine Gothic architecture. It's also free to enter outside of service hours, so we decided to take a look. The peacefulness of this square was interrupted for a bit when someone decided to drive their rickety trailer down a cobblestone road.
So much noise from a little cart.
That was a ridiculous amount of noise. Like, I think he just drove in a circle around the cathedral.
We couldn't have even talked to each other. It was too loud.
Wow. Oh well.
Yeah.
Right out front of the church is a beautiful little square that was full of people. But before we could make it too far, Catherine had some issues with her shoes. How you doing?
You have to be vigilant.
Catherine's had to tie her shoe like 4 times today.
I know. I don't like double knotting my shoes because it's just too much of a commitment. But then they come undone a lot.
Comment below if you're like that.
Stop.
It was getting to be time for a break, so we stopped at one of the nice little restaurants that line the streets of this area to grab a drink and a few bites to eat.
Stop for some refreshments, of course.
Yes, of course, some refreshments. We were now near the center of the city, and we found this neat little market. You say festival market stall, and Catherine says, how much can I spend? Is that right, Catherine?
I chose not to hear that.
There are tons of these types of things to see around Brussels, and the city was very alive today. It was a great atmosphere, and it was about to get even better when we entered the Royal Gallery of St. Hubert. This gallery may look familiar, but it actually predates many of the other famous shopping galleries in Europe, such as the beautiful and enormous Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II, which is located in Milan, and which we also had the pleasure of seeing last year. Designed in 1847, the Gallery of St. Hubert has tons of shops and features several clothing, jewelry, and luxury goods stores, as well as several chocolate shops. The gallery is protected from the elements by a beautiful glass-paned roof with cast iron framework, similar to what you'll find in the other larger and more famous galleries of Europe. We continued making our way to the city center, and finally we arrived at probably one of the most beautiful squares in this country, the Grand Place. Like many other parts of this city, this square also has a very long history, with a market being set up in this location as early as the 11th century. By the 17th century, nearly all of these extremely beautiful and golden houses that outline the square had been built, many of them guild halls for the city's many guilds of that time. By far the most eye-catching building on the square is of course the very opulent Town Hall building. This is looking a little familiar, huh, Catherine?
Very familiar. I just can't believe how much it looks like the Rat House.
I know.
In Munich.
I know, I'm expecting to just go into the Rat's Keller and get a good German meal.
Yeah, a little schnitzel.
Yeah. This town hall was constructed in stages between 1401 and 1455, and it's the only remaining medieval building on the square. If you want, you can actually enter the town hall and explore many of the old and beautifully decorated rooms for 15 euros. If you want to go further with your tour and see the wedding hall and get a great panoramic view of the city from the town hall balcony, as well as climb up into the town hall tower, you can do so for 25 euros. These can be booked directly from the town hall's website, and it would be a great way to learn some more about the history of this place and get some amazing views. One other thing you'll find in this square is chocolate. Belgium is known for plentiful chocolate shops selling these decadent and delicious treats. Chocolate making goes back centuries, and pretty much everyone agrees that they've gotten pretty good at making it here. Of course, we had to check out some of these shops and try some samples. We will be making another video on us trying several of the chocolates that we bought here, as well as letting you know which are the best ones to try. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you know when that video comes out. Making our way from the grand place, we decided that we wanted to take in some more of the royal features of this city. We headed through Brussels and passed by this old Brussels Stock Exchange building. This building became the home to the BSE Exchange when it was built in the late 1860s, again as part of a beautification project in the central city. It certainly looks grand, but now houses an exhibition center, some ancient archaeological sites, and a place called Belgian Beer World, a far cry from its early finance roots. Either way, it's a sight to see. To get to where we wanted to go next, we decided that we would take public transportation. We actually took quite a bit of public transport while we were in Brussels, and it was actually really easy to get around this city. There were plenty of station stops, the metro was always relatively clean, and we felt very safe using it. Okay, so we're going to get a day ticket today, which is super easy. Just come to these machines, make sure that you're coming to a buy machine and not a recharge machine because they have cards that you can recharge with rides. But basically, they have English, which is nice. And so we want to purchase a new ticket. We are going to do a one-day paper ticket, and you can see one journey is €2.60. So basically, if you have more than 3 rides, it's worth it to get the day ticket. So we're going to get 2 of them for Catherine and I, and then we're going to do a bank card with the receipt, and then you just pay. Super easy. And you will need to keep this the entire time because you also have to tap it to get out of the stations. They want to make sure that people didn't hop over the gates on the way in and then not, pay on the way out. So you have to tap it on both sides, but yeah. The cost of riding on the public transport in the urban area was either €8 for a day ticket, or a little over €2 for a single trip. We found that we used it enough to justify spending the €8 per day. Now we wanted to check out more of the royal areas of this city. Of course, we were heading over to the Royal Palace of Brussels. The Royal Palace was actually closed when we were there, but it will be opening in the summer of 2024. Right now, it's going through some very intricate renovations. When you visit, it's actually free to enter, assuming they keep the status quo once it reopens. It's hard to tell now with how many buildings are in this area, but this palace is actually located in a relatively high area above the rest of the city. This royal hill and the buildings that were here have been occupied by the royal families since the 11th century, though back then it was more of a fortified castle. Also, the royals don't actually occupy this as a residence, but it is a place where matters of state and foreign visits are conducted. King Leopold II, who was also responsible for several other building projects in the city at the time, decided that the palace was much too modest for a king of his stature, so he continually updated and added onto the building that was here at the time, turning the royal palace into what it is today, and boy is it impressive. Right around the corner from the royal palace is another older but very beautiful square, the Place Royale. This square was very torn up when we were here, but the buildings surrounding it were still quite amazing. On one side of the square is the St. Jacques sur Coudenberg Church. The rest of the square is lined with museums, including the Brussels Experience Center, the Musée Marguerite, and the Royal Fine Arts Museum. There's also this relatively out-of-place musical instruments museum, which sits in the beautiful Art Nouveau Old England building. This Old England building is actually an attraction in and of itself, and hosts tours of not only the musical museum, but also its architecture. From this square, we made our way down to this beautiful garden area. This garden serves as a very nice transition from the upper to the lower parts of the city. King Leopold, again, had converted this whole section of the city into an arts quarter in the 19th century as part of his urban renewal projects. Unfortunately, the quarter was left as a void for a few decades due to a lack of funds. Eventually, it was turned into the Mont des Arts, inaugurated in 1910. Once again, the buildings and park here were removed and rebuilt in the 1950s, along with the Congres Palace of Brussels and the Royal Library of Belgium flanking it on both sides. It was only a short walk from here to check out one of the most peculiar sights we saw while we were in the city, the famous peeing boy, or the Mannekin Pis. This statue is believed to have been first installed as a fountain in the 15th century as a cheeky way to deliver fresh water to the residents. The fountain is actually featured or in the background of paintings of Brussels throughout history. It was eventually cast in bronze in the 17th century and replaced the old stone fountain. It was at the time of the Brussels bombardment by the French in 1695 that this peeing boy became a symbol of the city. So much of the city was damaged beyond repair, but the statue remained unscathed. At that time, a phrase was written above the statue declaring, "The Lord placed me on a stone base, and now I raise my head above my enemies." Ever since then, the figure has been important to the city of Brussels. It serves as a symbol of resilience. The original bronze statue sits in the Brussels City Museum, but a replica still remains a huge tourist attraction out in the city. They even have several little outfits for the guy. Quite a crowd there for that.
Yes, yeah. It was kind of cool that he was dressed up for St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah? We still had so much in Brussels that we had to see. Make sure you join us in our next video, where we head to the northern part of the city to see a huge landmark, as well as travel around the entirety of Europe in just one day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.